Well, sit back. You actually, with Pierre, I would say put on your seatbelt. Okay. But you're in for a treat this morning. I met Pierre back around 1980 when he was the chaplain of Orangeville prison down in New Brunswick. And it's a hard, hard place. And he has spent more than 30 years of his life on a journey, trying to discover what it means to serve those who have been on the other side of the law, to serve the victims of their crime. He's been a victim of crime. He's no bleeding heart liberal. Pierre was the third child of 11 in Montreal, of a good Catholic French-Canadian family. He's been on a spiritual journey out of those roots that has led him to out of his chaplaincy work in one prison to ultimately have regional leadership in the Maritimes, to ultimately becoming chaplain general for Corrections Canada. He ultimately spent significant time then as assistant commissioner with two different roles with leadership over the whole system. One of the interesting aspects of his life was he took a year off on sabbatical and spent time with Muslim, Jewish, and Christian scholars exploring the common roots of our understanding of justice in the scriptures that we share in the three main religious traditions. And so he's been on a whole journey, both personally and professionally, trying to understand what justice means and how one does justice. He's married to Judy. They've been married lots of years, and they have 2 daughters and 7 grandchildren. Currently, Pierre is, after he retired, he didn't sit on his laurels. He began an organization called Just.Equipping. It's not just equipping, it's just equipping. And most of his energies are spent in Rwanda and the Congo. He's just returned from 3 months there. He's got a continuing work there where he is involved in training chaplains in the prison system, but also is deeply involved in some communities there, bringing together victims of the genocide and perpetrators of the genocide in circles of restoration and forgiveness. And so he grapples with real life, real pain, and yet he's one of the most positive, energetic, and creative people that I have the privilege to know. So would you give a good Orangeville welcome to our friend Pierre Allard.
Thanks a lot, Norm. Thank you, Norm, your worship of all that. And distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, it's a real privilege to have been invited to be with you on your 23rd prayer breakfast, 150th anniversary of Orangeville, and Norm's birthday today. And I'd like to share with you my personal journey to restorative justice. So come with me. Come with me. We're in 1972. Now, that's a long time ago. We're in 1972, and I have just been appointed the chaplain at Orangeville Penitentiary. Now, Orangeville is in Quebec, not in New Brunswick. It's Dorchester in New Brunswick, but Orangeville is in the north of Montreal. At that time, probably the worst penitentiary in Canada with Millhaven. Now, Dostoevsky has said, you want to judge a society, enter its prisons. You want to judge a society, enter its prisons. I have found this to be true. Now, so if there's going to be a new kid on the block, a new chaplain in the chapel, you're going to have a number of prisoners who are going to come down to size him up. What kind of person is he going to be? Is he going to be easy to manipulate? If we go and cry on his shoulder, maybe he's going to give us the phone call that the parole officer has refused us. So what kind of person? Now, let's be honest. It's a bit like this on the outside. If you're going to have a new priest in a parish or a new pastor in a church, isn't it true that you're going to have a few people that you haven't seen for a while to come also and size them up? So in a chapel about, I would say, 1/4 the size of this room, about 50 guys came down. Now, I had put a table, I had put a Bible in the middle of the table, and I'm French Canadian, as you figure out by my accent, and I love candles. So I had put a big candle on the right-hand side of the Bible, and as all the people came in, I said, my name is Pierre Allard, I'm the new chaplain here. As I started speaking, there was a big fellow in the back, about 6'3", who started walking toward the front of the room, and he came and he grabbed the candle on the right-hand side of the Bible, and he put it back on the left-hand side, and he left. I said, hey, I'm going to show him who's the boss here. I'm the chaplain. I'm going to put the candle where I want. So I grabbed the candle from the left-hand side of the Bible, and I put it back on the right-hand side, but it made me somewhat nervous. And I said, I hope we'll come to know each other, that we'll start Bible studies, discussion group. When he got to his place and he saw what I had done, well, he started again. And he was so angry, you could almost see flame in his eyes, you know. And he came and he grabbed the candle and he put it under my nose. He said, you are new here. I'm telling you, we want the candle on that side. Well, you know, looking at his size and under the influence of the Holy Spirit, I decided not to touch that candle anymore. Now, it was not my best sermon, and I wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. And I went home, and I told my wife, Judy, I said, Judy, I'm terribly sorry. I really felt I had found my niche in life. I really felt I had found my calling. I'm telling you, I'm giving myself 2 weeks, and that's it. Well, 40-some years later, I'm really glad that I went back. I'm really glad that I went back, that I called that big fellow, that I sat him in my office, that we cleared the air. Now, why do I say I'm glad that I went back? I'm glad that I went back because you cannot be involved with prisoners for over 35 years without discovering two very important things. First, you discover the many faces of evil. You discover the many faces of evil. It is horrific what some human beings do to other human beings. So you discover the many faces of evil, but you also discover the very wounded side of humankind. The very wounded side of humankind. Now, I have never asked for pity for prisoners when I work with them, and now that I'm retired, I'm certainly not going to start to ask for pity. But have I always asked for a kind of a deeper understanding, trying to understand some of the causes that may make some human being act. Now, just one story. As a chaplain, you're bearer of good news, but you're also the bearer of bad news. If somebody died, the head of security tells you, and you're the one who calls the person and say, look, I have bad news for you. Your brother died, your sister died. I have never known how to share bad news in a nice way, so I'm pretty direct when I have bad news to share. The head of security one day, I was in Dorchester then, told me, he said, call the twin brothers. That's what everybody referred to them, as the twin brothers. I did not know them. He said, call the twin brothers, tell them their father died this morning. So I called them, sat them in my office, said, I'm sorry, I don't really know you, but I have bad news for you. Your father died this morning. I was not ready for their reaction. When I said, your father died this morning, they jumped up, they gave each other the high five, and they said, finally, the bastard is gone. You know? That story has followed me all my life. What kind of family environment would someone would have had to know that when you tell him your father is dead, it's not a cause for grieving, it's a cause for rejoicing. It's a cause for rejoicing. Trying to understand more deeply. So if you had met me, let's say, in 1978, 79, and asked me, what do you do? I said, I work as a chaplain, and I love it. I'm discovering a very human world. I'm discovering awful things, but I'm discovering also that some of the pilgrimages of some of the stories just make me shake my head. And at times I say, but by the grace of God, if I did not have some teachers who kept believing in me when I was a teenager, who kept believing in me despite some of the things I was in, who believed in me more than I believe in myself, where would I be? But all of this was to change for me in 1980. By then, I'm the chaplain at Dorchester in New Brunswick. Now, I'm a French Canadian. I had 5 brothers and 5 sisters. My parents in Quebec, boy, they had the recipe to make kids, Like in their generation, they made a lot of, and let's be honest, French Canadian made a lot of babies. It was one way to counteract the majority of English Canadians. It would keep the balance. And talking about that, I did my part to keep Canada together. I married an English Canadian. Okay? So now I had 5 brothers, 5 sisters. We had never known death in my family. And in 1980, in March 1980, I received a phone call from the Quebec Provincial Police telling me that my brother Andrew, had been brutally murdered and abandoned on the South Shore of Montreal. Now, it changes everything. I was a victim then. I was a victim. And I went to the funeral. And I remember, in a very cold morning in Quebec City, my other brothers and I waiting to bring the casket in. And my older brother, who doesn't share my faith, got really angry. And he said, what are we doing here? We're going in a church to pray to a God I don't even believe in. He said, if we had any guts as a family, we wouldn't be here. We'd be in Montreal trying to find out we did it and do the same thing to them. And he caught us. Caught us, it was real. When you've been hurt deeply, the feeling of vengeance, the desire to pay back is real. It grabs you. But we went on for the funeral, and I went back to Dorchester, and I was not the same anymore. Up to then, I had worked with prisoners, and it was Mark, and I started seeing them through their crime. Oh, that's the bank robber, the sexual offenders, the murderer. Something had to happen to me. Something had to happen to me, or I had to stop working in that environment. And I started praying, I started reflecting. And for the first time in my life, I was introduced to the concept of restorative justice. Restorative justice says when a crime is committed, it is much more than the breaking of a law. It's the breaking down of human relationships in a community where real people have hurt real people. And beyond the question of guilty, not guilty, is the more important question, how do we make things better? How do we make things better? How do we heal our communities that have been hurt? How do we heal the victims that have been hurt? But also, restorative justice invites us to stretch our arms, open our hearts and our mind and say, we must not only try to heal the victims, not only try to heal the community, but we must also learn to embrace the offender. The offenders have not fallen off the moon. They have not fallen off the moon. They come from our Canadian communities. They come from our Canadian communities. How do we bring healing in those communities? Restorative justice says, in respect, we must listen to the victim's voice. Listen in depth to the victims. Take care of their needs, bring healing. But we must also listen to the communities that have been hurt, that are not the same, that live in fear. Listen to the community. And we must also listen to the offender. Restorative justice says the focus has to be on the truth. On the truth. There can be no restorative justice if somebody doesn't take responsibility, if somebody doesn't say, I have done wrong. I have done wrong. We know our justice system, I'd much rather be tried in Canada than anywhere else in the world, but there are a lot of limitations. And the focus on guilty, not guilty according to the law lead to all kind of tricks. Brilliant lawyers that can bring, points of law. Focus on the truth, says restorative justice. And then restorative justice says we must also then try to repair. Try to repair. How can we make things better? There can be compensation, financial. There can be ways of saying when victim and offender can come together. Hearing for a victim the voice of offender saying, it is not your fault. It is my fault. I take responsibility. Many victims, that's all they want to hear. That's all they want to hear the voice of the offender. But we've kept too often victims and offenders apart. I mean, I know we have started a program in Canada wherein, we bring them. But I'm telling you, since I've retired, I never thought in my life that God would allow me to go to a place and experience could the restorative justice work in post-genocide Rwanda. The genocide in Rwanda in 1994, I'm still trying to put my mind around it because I don't think anything in the history of humankind compares to it. Not even the Holocaust. I mean, we can never justify the Holocaust, but you had German and the Jews, you had different nationalities, different faith. It doesn't excuse it. But in Rwanda, the most Christian country in Africa, Christians killing Christians. Within a span of 100 days, nearly 1 million people massacred. Christians of the same choir practicing together on Saturday night, and then on Sunday morning hearing that the plane of the president be shut down, the Hutus in the choir running to get the machete, and the Tutsis in the choir running for their lives. The betrayal by church leaders up to 1994 through the centuries. If you took sanctuary in a church, the most evil people on earth would not trespass that. In Rwanda in 1994, some priest said the people come to the church, you'll be safe. In Nentirama, 5,000 went in the church. The priest said, they're all yours. They went through the grenades, killed them all except a few that escaped. I met one of them, Emmanuel. He lost sight of one eye. He wanted us to see the bullet. He's a man lost. There are a number of them. Genocide perpetrators inside, through the work of some chaplains we had trained. 400 in one prison, 400 prisoners wrote a letter asking forgiveness of their survivors. We delivered those letters. We finished 2 months ago delivering the 400 one. Out of the 400 people that received the letter, over 175 of them have said, I appreciate that, but I want to go. I want to go and look at that offender in the face and hear. And I have questions. So every Monday night we have 2 or 3 victims who come to our home we share dinner, and then we hear their story. And I don't get used to it. Every story I hear seems to be more awful than the next. A man was there and he said, they forced me at gunpoint to bury my wife alive. The other man said, I can forgive many things. I can forgive that they killed my mother, my father, my brother, my sister. But the way they killed my child, taking him and hitting his head against the rock in front of me, I cannot forgive. And they tell us their stories, and the next day, they go and meet. We go in the prison with them, and they meet face to face. And they have questions to ask that only the offender can answer. Did you kill my mother first or my father first? Oh, you killed my father first. Did my mother see you kill her 3 children? Which one did you kill first? Question that only the offender. And I must say, on behalf of the offenders, most of them have been forthcoming and have really told the truth and have repented. I had an offender who walked in the door, like about from where the door is, and on his knees and in tears, walk on his knees to the table, yelling and begging forgiveness. A broken man, realizing the horrible human things he had done. And after asking the questions, 95% of the survivors have gotten up and gone and said, I forgive you. It blows my mind. The human spirit capability of restarting in the face of horrible things. The gracious mercy of God. People tell me, if he asks me forgiveness and he's sincere, how can I not forgive him? I have been forgiven. So amazing things. I never thought I would test that restorative justice could work. I'm saying restorative justice is an incredible vision worth discovering. And it's a biblical vision, although I feel that from a biblical perspective, we have lost that treasure. And we have become very punitive. And we have to rediscover that treasure. But my time is soon up. So come back with me. Come back with me to Orangeville. Now, this time we're in, like, March 1974. And my wife has given birth to a beautiful first girl, Sophia. And because every Sunday my wife came with me to the prison, I went to see the warden. I said, I want my child to be baptized, to be dedicated inside the jail. The warden looked at me and said, Pierre, what's wrong with you? You know, this is a maximum security. Now, we're back now, it's being done more, but we're back in 1974. He said, we have never brought a baby in this prison, and we won't. Well, I'm stubborn, and I kept going to see him, and kept going to see him. Finally, to get rid of me, he said, okay, you can do it. But under one condition. I said, which one? He said, you have to promise me that you won't tell anybody. Anybody. And I promise, I understood. If we had said there would be a baby in that chapel that morning, the 450 prisoners would have been there. So I kept my word. And on a very cold March morning, we carried our bundle of love through the 7 gates that went into the chapel. Now remember, nobody knows. And what happened that morning touched my life forever. When the 50 guys or so came down and they saw a baby there, spontaneously, they made a big circle. And the one nearest to Judy took Sophia, looked at her, and in total silence, passed her to the next one, who passed her to the next one. And that baby went around the circle. And guys with big tattoos had tears coming down their eyes. And I found out, well, I'm not touched a child for 15 years. another one for 20 years. And as they look at that child, you could see, what? What if I could start again? You could see it. What if I could start again? And I understood that as communities, as we start taking care of the people, the victims, the people that hurt in our community, not forgetting the offender, we need to offer peoples the possibility under God's grace of new beginning. God bless Orangeville. Bless the leader, bless the community. Continue to be a community that cares for each other. Build something strong. Never let your heart shrink, and stretch your arms where there's room for the community, the victim, but also the offender. God bless you.